to the cloud. Yay! This is the first one of 2024. Hi, everybody. I'm Malika Albrecht, and I'm the founding editor of Redheaded Stepchild. We'll be opening for submissions in February. So if you've ever had a poem rejected, you know where to send it. We only want rejects. But I have to say, our book launches are the opposite of that. These are people that are putting books out, and Bill Griffin is one of my favorite humans for so many different reasons. Not the least of which is that he's a stellar poet, but he's also just such an awesome human being. Has been the backbone of the North Carolina Poetry Society for a number of years, and that's where I got to meet him. So grateful for North Carolina Poetry Society for that reason. Bill Griffin is a family physician in rural North Carolina. His poems have appeared in numerous publications, and he has published several collections. If you don't have at least 4 of these, then I would suggest you catch up, including Crossing the River, which was Main Street Rag, and that came out in 2017. River Story, Tree Story, which was Orchard Street 2018. And as I was saying, and I thought it was 20 years. It's more than 20 now, Bill. But he's served on the board of the North Carolina Poetry Society for over 2 decades, and also is generously, if you haven't been to griffinpoetry.com, you're really going to want to check that out, because he showcases North Carolina poets, oftentimes introducing new books out, and then a lot of nature things woven in there. It's all my favorite things. One of my favorite books of his is the one that he collaborated with his wife, Linda French Griffin, and that was Snake Den Ridge, a bestiary. It was an illustrated book of poems set in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The illustrations that Linda does are amazing. I have several framed throughout the house, and I actually bought the really nice bound book and gave it to my dad. In 2020, the choral suite The Wanderer's Carols, lyrics by Bill and music by Mark Daniel Merritt, premiered for Christmas at Biltmore House in Asheville, North Carolina. In 2012, Bill did one of the coolest things. He was a poet in resident at the North Carolina Zoological Park, and you have a poem up as a full-time exhibit in perpetuity.
It's still there.
It's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's hidden in the woods.
In the woods. I just think that's so cool. That was such a great program. How We All Fly is available both through mail and online, and I've got the link in the chat section. I'll re-put it up there to go to Bill's website. You can also reach out to the Orchard Street Press, and I am going to stop talking and highlight our poet that we've all come to see. Bill, I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much, Mike. I can't thank you enough for that overwhelming introduction. And yes, when you were my boss in the Poetry Society, it was a great time. Yes, I'll serve with you anywhere, anytime. And so some of you all may not be as familiar with Redheaded Stepchild, which, in order to submit a poem there, the poem has to have been rejected by some other press or publication. And I was going to mention, Malika, that submissions open in February. So, and as a matter of fact, before I jump into reading from the book, I want to really share actually a landmark poem, a really significant poem, because it is the first poem I ever had published in Redheaded Stepchild in 2016. Yes, right. And among other places, it was rejected by the American Literary Review. So, yeah. So this poem is called Sea in the Dark. And there's somebody in the audience who knows about this poem because it's dedicated to Michael, Sue, and Karen and that night at Weymouth. Sea in the Dark. Shattering dry scales of loblolly bark into clatter rain, the race and commotion of 2 gray swirls sounds like buck and doe bursting through laurel, and the drift and stir of long dry needles falling across our necks becomes the unwelcome prick of many jointed legs. Now the light leaves us wholly to the constriction of our fears, a path so commonplace when winding through the day twists mystery in darkness. We follow one thin beam held head high to fend the grope of branches. It pierces a field of jewels, fallen stars, reflected sparks, bright emerald and amber, beads of dew, blood of tree sap. We kneel to find within each glint a spider's eye. Through the night we pass the phantom self, but all the while it watches.
Yeah, all right. Very nice.
So I'm reading from my most recent chapbook, How We All Fly, from the Orchard Street Press. What a wonderful press. The editor, Jack Christoffo in Gates Mills, Ohio, is so welcoming, and I strongly encourage you to check them out. Submissions are open right now through April 30th for their annual publication and contest. So it's orcstress.org, but orcpress.org, orchpress.org. But I recommend you check them out. And this is my second chapbook that they've published. And I want to start with the poem, just a short poem, but it's where the title of the book came from. Save. 3 yellow jackets have gathered to worship a dead mouse. They are jealous of their god. If you nudge the mouse with a stick, they will sting you. How we all fly to that which we hope will save us. What if it is really the mouse who worships the wasps? To take its bit of something on the path to becoming nothing and make it new. I also want to welcome several members of my writers group, Kim and Suzanne and Renee, and our fearless leader, Frank, who we all first met at this writers workshop at Tremont. It's wonderful to have you guys out there. And I did a reading from this book a month or so ago, and some of you were there. So I want to read all different poems this time, so that if you were at the previous reading, these will be different. And first I want to, next I want to go on with a couple of bird poems. Can't have a book without some bird poems. So we have this young librarian in town who is so cool. I actually took care of him when he was a baby, and now he's about 6'6", and he plays the double bass jazz. He has a friend who plays electric jazz guitar, and so several times a year they have jazz poetry night at the library. And so when the last time we had it a month or so ago, he and his friend play and just riff and improvise, and people stand up and read poems. So this is the poem I read for jazz poetry night a month or so ago. It's called High Flying Blues. What about Blue Jay? Old rusty hinge of a voice, barely knows one note. How he skies his beak and tries his best to sound like red-tailed hawk. Tell myself he's just scaring some squirrel away from his nest, or flashing, flaunting for the girl jays. But what do you really want, my jay? Some feathered itch in you to snatch breath and steal a hot exhale of God? Spiral higher than the king of feathers, awe shatter everyone you overshadow? Jesus, Jay, how come you can't see yourself like all the rest of us? Plenty sharp and plenty smart, bird. Hey, even 4-year-olds know you by name. This will work better. And another bird poem, Confidences. Confidences. Raven spoke to him as the wind ripped brutal up the face of alligator back, cloud fingers frayed to baptize him with dry ash of snow. He and Raven together faced the cold, he with heart tamped closed, Raven pinions spread. And while that dark spirit cambered, black tail and wing, to yaw first north, then south, shrugged the merest flex to slide forward into the gale, then back, as ravens circled him, dark halo, all the while it quarreled, muttered, churred, croaked sotto voce, argued, reasoned, reassured, until a hard gust shoved him back. Then Raven folded wings to arrow forward, down, away, to join the phalanx of the storm's advance, where two other ravens already danced in turbulence. The low sky ached, burned into his breathing, tears to diamonds. Night threatened to rise up and claim him, but he churred, he argued, he danced. So do we not all fly to that which we hope will save us? What are we looking for? Where are we going to find our meaning? Is such a thing even possible? I want to take a break from the book and read another landmark poem. And this is the second one that I ever had published in Redheaded Stepchild in 2021. And every time I read this poem, I come a little closer to figuring out what it is that it means. Maybe we'll get there. Meaningfulness. Meaningfulness. The ant troubles a dead moth. Not that he's too heavy to lift, but that airy silk powder wings block the sun, the hill, the other ants, until meaningfulness is no path at all, and every direction is moth. Midnight spirit, flit and moon dance, moth conceived in flight and to gravity inconceivable. Imagine that he walks gladly with another's feet beneath him. This second journey not of understanding, but of being understood. The ant walks, yes, we can say walk, for even given many feet, one must still lift one and put one down. She walks a thread, the distance of life, unspooled at first as someone else's, but finally her own skittered path, unblazed, the end of which is not moth, but the beginning. And that one was rejected by Southern Poetry Review, Asheville Poetry Review, 32 poems, and 14 others before it arrived at Redheaded Stepchild.
Yo.
So continuing on that theme of looking for meaning, back to the book, this is called Wavelength. Sugar water, clear plastic, sunshine through hickory leaves sparkles the hummingbird feeder. Its emerald blur hovers into clarity, and ripple shadows pattern the liquid at the velocity of flicking tongue. High school physics. Mr. Price arranges the flat basin, mirror, angled light, and we count wave crests, frequency, reinforcement, interference. Not that such enlightenment makes it easier to tune in WMMS from Cleveland or clarify how morning sun, now creeping up my arm, can be both polarized and incoherent. How does length confer more heat than light? It's time to leave for church, to sit quietly before the Illuminati. Tell me, are there shadows of the divine in red-shifted star glow, or within the halos sunlight paints across my porch, the green refraction of transitory angels? And so I've got 2 or 3 more, and I'm going to close out with some love poems. So I think you could certainly argue that all poems have their roots somewhere in love, whether it's distant or lost or longed for. But it's somewhere, it's in there. This one is titled Hatteras. Sand begs to be moved, to to lift itself in the onshore breeze, eddy in overwash, only ever still in stillness. And when has there ever been stillness? Sea oats dive deep, breezes inscribe arcs at their ankles until the gale gives them wings. Live oak, knobbed elbows, roots burrowed wider than its crown, rising water shifts silt, and the tree kneels. And how tethered, how lashed have we been 40 years? We tell ourselves the island is sure, perpetual, a barrier to wind and surf. But when we cling each to the other, a gale, a flood, we still beg to be moved. And this is called Blackberry Lilies. So the speaker here is my brother-in-law, who married my wife's sister. His name is Jeff. This is for Jeff and Jody. And this is him speaking, Blackberry Lilies. Each blooms for just one morning. Petals spread like welcome. Next day, they're orange gone pale. I poached them from the roadside in Kentucky 40 years ago, driving home from Berea. I knew mother would treasure them by her porch where the mountain sun at noon might find them. Did we even have such color in West Virginia? Hard frost, snow deep, still each spring they blossomed, spread. And me, I didn't care much for living, gone feral, fallen from the garden. But when your sister pulled me up, I dug a clump for her, planted it here beside our sunroom, morning face of our home together. Look now, so many, almost August, and still a dozen buds ready to smile, enough to share. Take this pot, earth and rhizomes, find a warm spot you'll pass by every day. This fall, the heads will dry and open, black seeds like fat berries on stiff stems all winter long. And just when you think your world's gone dead, something reminds you where the roots live.
Nice.
So I'm going to close out with one more landmark poem from Redheaded Stepchild 2022. And I was so busy doing other things, Malik, I didn't send you any submissions in 2023, but I will rectify that. But this is the name of this poem is Last Times, for my best friend Rick. Last Times. Maybe we suspect, but how can we really know which of all times will be the last? Later, it occurs to me, finding his photo in the album at the funeral, singing a hymn he loved, running into his kid at the mall. That was the last joke we laughed at, the last sandwich we shared, last time we talked everything over. And each moment, I knew there couldn't be many more, but I wouldn't admit one day there would be no more at all. He knew. He told me he wanted to finish selling that little piece of land, leave things easier for Jan and the boys, to make things right. Thank God there was nothing that still needed making right between us. Maybe nothing that really needed saying at all, while I waited by the door to the hospital room where he'd lived for a month, getting ready to say the evening's goodbyes to him and Jan, edging away until Linda remembered to tell him about our trip to the lighthouses, got him smiling, got him telling her a story in return, taking us with him, just like him, never to leave anyone behind. Just like today, here he is beside me. I hear that chuckle. His gentle tease still makes me grin, and something hot swells up inside and tells me last times must be meant to last.
Boy, Bill.
Thank you so much.
Oh, Bill, I am so glad you read all the Redheaded Stepchild. I forgot how fortunate we were to publish those poems. And Boy, that last one in particular just hits so hard. If people want to unmute and just take a moment to say thank you, Bill, that was
Thank you, Bill.
wonderful.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
So beautiful.
Yeah,
Appreciate
Thank you,
you
Bill.
being
Thank
here.
you.
Thanks for
Mhm.
having.
Thank you.
Thanks, indeed.
It's wonderful.
It was wonderful, Bill. Thank you.
beautiful.
Thank you so much.
I know people have questions, but I have to just stop right now and say, holy smokes. You know, usually when Bill, I've gotten to hear you read, it's an open mic where we get to read one poem. And, you know, I remembered all the poems you read that we had gotten to publish, and I've gotten to read your poems, but I've never gotten to sit with you while you read so many in a row, and just the impact that had, it was profound for me. There's so many lines that we put in the chat section that you'll get to go to. But I think what struck me, and I'd be curious to see other people's thoughts about this, was the complexity, the layers that are in each poem, and the tenderness in all your poems. When you were talking about love poems, I mean, all the poems feel like love poems to me, because there's such a beautiful way of holding space for what you're looking at. And I deeply admire that. I deeply admire the way you really pay attention to detail. You know, your poems and the sounds. I mean, hearing them read out loud, I sometimes miss when I'm reading on the page just how lovely the poems are sound wise. Just beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's so,
Yeah, Frank just wrote, what a perfect way to kick off the year. True story. Thanks,
Yeah.
Frank.
it's
Or
almost
more.
an illusion. They're so well crafted that they seem like they're not crafted at all, but they're just, oh, you're just looking at a moth, or you're just, and then there's so much meaning and so much tenderness and so much careful looking. But the poem doesn't say, oh, look, somebody worked on this to write it, you know? I mean, I'm sure that you did, but it's just there. It's imminent. There's grace in them.
Oh, I
It's
love
really
that. I
special.
think,
To let that come through is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
you know, and you just hit upon the word sincerity. There was something else that you said. You know, that's what Regina just wrote. So it's kind of dovetailing this sense of real power and layers. That's lovely. Does anybody have any questions about, you know, to Bill about how this book came about, or perhaps your writing process? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, how the book came about was I submitted poems to the Orchard Street Press. They have an annual contest and put out a publication. And then this year, or 2023, I actually happened to win second place. But they invite several people to send a collection if the editor happens to like what you've sent. And he invited me to send a collection. I pulled this together really from poems collected over a number of years, probably at least 10 years,
Oh, wow.
that seem to connect with each other, both because of their little links to the natural world. You know, they all kind of interlock in that way, but also the idea of finding meaning, how we all fly to that which we hope will save us. And so, as I said, the editor was very, very gracious to work with. Really nice guy.
Well, obviously, we agree with the taste, yeah. And I just realized I just got a message. Yeah, Elliot, CS Elliot definitely can. Yeah.
Okay.
We would love to have you read something. Does anybody have a question for Bill?
Could you say anything about your process with, you know, creating a particular poem? What the entry point is, or?
Sure. And I am not a super diligent or organized writer, but I do carry a book around and jot little things in it. And then that's usually what grows into the poem eventually. And I didn't read this poem tonight, but so about close to 20 years ago, I noticed that my wife was getting her first gray hair, and her father had not gone gray until he was close to 80. And I thought, oh, this was such a tender moment. Oh, she's getting her first gray hair. And I just wanted to look at that hair, you know, and you could only see it when the light was bright. So 10 years later, I wrote a poem about it. Okay. It was in there for 10 years before it finally turned into a 23 grays. But that's sort of sometimes what happens. Some of these little images start with the image, and eventually something grows around it to turn into the whole poem.
You just reminded me of one of the things that Bill used to do when we were all at Weymouth, when there was a real big event. You would get headlamps and
Oh,
much
right.
like the poem you were talking about, and we would go out spider hunting. And
Yes.
so that stayed with me for so long. And I just realized one of my poems makes use of that as an abiding image, and I got it from you.
Well,
So thank
and
you for that.
I think that night at Weymouth, I wrote down it was September 15th, 2006. And then Redheaded Stepchild accepted the poem in 2016. So there was a little bit of fermentation going on during all that space before it finally reached its final form. And but Karen Stewart was there that night.
Yeah.
And we lived to tell the tale.
Yes, it was wonderful. Unforgettable.
Right. So you guys got to try that. This is a perfect time.
It's
Spiders don't care if it's cold. Go out and hold a flashlight like this so that the light is beaming right back to your face, and you will see little glints and sparkles. The first time I was out, I had underestimated how long it was going to take me to get down off the mountain. And so I was wearing a headlamp, and the sun was going down, and I was still had a couple of miles to get to my car. And all along the path, it was just lit up with little purple, pink, green. And I thought, oh, this is so wonderful. The dew has fallen along the trail and it's guiding me home. And I said, this is way too weird. And I got down on my hands and knees, and every little spark was a spider.
Awesome.
Spider diamonds, like millions of tiny diamonds. It's like magic.
It doesn't ever leave you, right?
Right.
No,
Right.
So a whole world. And I think that's, again, we're kind of things that make these poems so beloved is that, it's all the sparks or things that, light us up, or I don't know. And it's just such that's it. The sense of wonder is one of the things I also enjoy in these poems. Beautiful sense of wonder. So thank you for that, Bill.
I'm just curious about everything, and everything is interesting. And the weeds that grow in your grass in the spring, hey, some of those taste good. And where did they come from? They probably came over here on the bottom of the boot of some settler from the middle of England 400 years ago. And so just every little detail like that is something to explore and to like you say, to wonder about.
Yeah, Bill, I always think in your poems, you have always found some bit of magic in whatever the poem has to do with anything. There's always some grain of absolute magic that I had never considered before. And it's always such a joy. Like the spider eyes. Like, honestly, you guys, if you've always thought spiders were creepy or gross or you want to step on them, if you ever go in the woods and see spider eyes with your headlamp on, it's that kind of thing. Your poems are like that, Bill. You just like all of a sudden it's like, oh, there is this magic I never knew, I never considered, and that is such a gift that your poetry is.
Well, thanks.
Thank you for that.
Thanks. You couldn't say anything kinder. I appreciate that.
That's perfect place to end. Perfectly said, Karen. Thank you for that. We will head into open mic. Bill, thank you. And this is such a great group. We've got a wonderful list for open mic. I'm going to start with Christy.
Okay,
and I will spotlight you.
all right. Let me get
Oh,
to my
sorry.
page here.
Take your time because it's taking me a minute. There we go. Maybe?
Okay, can everybody hear me? Okay,
Sure.
this is
Yes. Yep.
from my chapbook, Finding Her, and it's through Finishing Line Press. I'll put the link in just a few minutes. And this is, I'm going to start and read the first poem in the book because it's a new year. And I feel like this is a great place when you need to start over and look for something new. So here we go. 1 minute to be who I was, to grieve my loss, to take stock of what I have, to accept it all, to strategize a forward move, to imagine one foot in front of the other before quietly stepping into who I am now. Thanks. Happy New Year, y'all.
Thank you,
Sure.
Christy. Yeah, don't forget to put something in there for the way to get it becoming her. And I have Julia next. Let me come your way.
Okay, let's see. I guess I need to.
Great.
How about that?
Good.
Okay. Bill, I wish I had a poem about a spider, but you've inspired me to think about maybe coming up with one. I have a poem about a gorilla, which I'll not read, but thank you so much. This is a poem I wrote at Weymouth a lot of years ago. And it's kind of a love poem, but it's appropriate to the season. It's called How to Get Through the Winter. In the library tonight, owls roost. Outside, small stars fall from sycamores in gray lamplight. You have survived when civility returns, and afternoons with small gray weather tingle in window corners. No flood of years just yet, but you begin to see your breath and count the days, remembering things put by for later. You would like to remember love. Like it if the woman in blue with deep brown eyes had said yes, and the summer after had broken laws and galloped like sheet lightning between the stars. You would like it if your neighbors did not call so often to remind you that the house leans to windward and the oak that keeps the porch roof from collapse can't last forever. Last year, the pipes burst while you were away, and ice in the heavy pines made long jams, and the chainsaws frightened you. But this November brought you sycamores, bays and hollies redding as drooping evenings slowed. You remember precisely the instant when another country, like a woman with deep brown eyes, took you in. Thank you.
Oh, Julian, that's gorgeous. Thank you. Make sure you check the comments section, please.
Okay.
Paul, I'm coming to you.
Thank you. So the poem I have is older too. In fact, 35 years old. I totally lost touch with it. And Alana Dagenhart used it in the most recent Pine Whispers as to end her letter, her president's letter. And it was first published in '87 in a little anthology called Durham, A Living Culture. And then 12 years later in Word and Witness, 100 Years of North Carolina Poetry that Sally Buckner put together. And I lost touch with it. So it's happy occurrence for me to find it again. A morning song. Even at dawn, I imagine the chances a life must take. The path's dark turns take us far from our learning. In each new choice, Father's greater fear. The rabbit, seeing the black earth coming red, ask, grass fire, or blood edge of hawk shadow. Across the field, the housewife, safe from nature, authors romance novels against the insidious coil of routine. The dishes dirtied, then washed. Her husband, the engineer, turns from his computer to carve primitive figures, his brow folded into the problem. Even as my hand trails under the covers to meet yours, I distrust the dependable morning trill breaking from the quince bush. As the trite concert of crickets, completing another night, gives way to cicadas. These days before us are well-worn and treacherous steps. At each predictable descent, at each precious peril, we stoop to meet the cost. We bow and hope to rise. Thank you.
Oh, my.
Gorgeous. Boy, I'm glad you found that again.
Well, actually, a lot
Absolutely.
found it. I would have never found it.
And, Word and Witness is such a fabulous anthology, 100 Years of North Carolina Poets. If you haven't, seen that before, I would suggest looking it up. That's awesome. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Joan, I'm headed your way. Oh, they asked, yay. And Paul, if you'll put your latest book in there, that would be great
For sure.
in the chat section. Thank you. Hi, Joan.
Hello. This is a much more recent poem than Paul's. Much more. Christmas visit. After they've gone, after the last photos, hugs, the smaller boy running back to wrap himself around my knees, a longing smile from the older one. After a sweep of the house for handprints on glass, overflowing trash cans, overlooked leftovers, sticky refrigerator handles, toothpaste spit. My voice no longer raised to say, too loud. The only too loud, the buzzer of the dryer when it completes its 9th round. Sheets, blankets, towels. And I found the manual for the stereo and figured out how to stop its alarm from buzzing at 6 a.m. because a little finger pressed a button. After they've gone, myself, the sole witness of the Christmas tree, lights lit only for me, breakfast uninterrupted, reading caught up on. My house blessedly silent and spotless, advice to my daughter unspoken, observations kept to myself until she asks me for help. I look over and over at those last photos with longing, with the same smile.
Oh, Joan, that's gorgeous. I love that. Check the chat section. I try to remind people because there's lots of comments going in about your poems. Thank you guys for reading for Open Mic. I've got Karen next, my diligent co-host. Coming to you, Karen.
Okay. So I very often start my day by reading other people's poetry, and it's always a good day when that is some poetry by Bill Griffin. And Bill, I am loving How We Fly so much. I love all your books, but I'm just loving that over and over and over again. And this is a poem that's not necessarily in response to your poetry, but I sat with your Lead Us On poem for a while, and this one came to me. So this is Under the Breath. Sky is light this morning, trying to clear her throat of clouds. She shrouds the glare of sun from her children, floating a sheet of seemingly white infinity in between, the in-between space of us. No breeze is teasing the trees. There is only being in the gentle still of these moments under the breath.
Karen, that's gorgeous. Oh, I love the music in that too. I love it when you read and are inspired. All those poems are always so beautiful. Yeah, under the breath, clear her throat of clouds. Yeah, check the chat section. And I meant to remind Joan to put a link to her most recent book. I'm glad you remembered to do that, Joan, because sometimes I forget. And we're getting to go to Bill Blackley. I'm super excited. I haven't gotten to see him in years. Bill, it's so good to see you.
Don't be disappointed.
I am. I'm happy now
thank-
that you're here.
Well, thanks to Bill Griffin, I'm here, and he and I had grandfathers that we discovered, both railroad engineers. They lived a stone's throw from each other in Hamlet. We just, after 25 years, how long have we been friends, Bill? 40 years, 45, something like that, 40 years. And I could actually throw a rock to his house from here. And he and I are so different in the way we manage our poetry. He is so organized. He's tried to help me, but I have books 2, 3, 4 feet deep of poems that they just collect and collect. I love to write, and I enjoy writing them, but I don't do anything with them. And I've had a number of rejections. I used to send things in 10 years ago, but I just grabbed and looked, and so I've got a poem now. Back, I just want to show you this little. Can you see this at the bottom? That's the way I do these poems. And so I've got a title category, when it was written, what inspired it, and then how many times it's been revised. This one's been revised about 10 or 15 times, something like that. Anyway, I'll read it. See what happens. Forging. My wife and I rolled on the floor, laughed, cried over lines in Norman Stock's poems sent for review in advance of a manuscript class. From the tenor of his poems, I anticipated a young man in jeans with wire rims, but Norman shuffled in, puffed in, red-eyed, phlegmy, baggy pants held by suspenders, and slumped. Quietly, his index finger curled to his chin. When he spoke, our room glowed, faces warmed as if by bellows blown. His critique fell like a velvet hammer, shaping steel rods into leaves and roses. His palm tapped a rhythm on the table. His tongue, red-hot metal, plunged stems with a hiss into cold water. Line breaks angled against a spinning stone. A shower of sparks lighted the entire room like a Japanese lantern.
Oh, how nice.
And that was gorgeous, Bill. And I was just remembering one of my favorite open mic experiences that I remember, Bill, was you playing harmonica and doing some poetry. You remember that, Karen? That was such a fun day. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. I hope that you'll come back and do some, if you want to do something like that, we would love to have you do that.
Well, Bill, I'm hanging on to Bill Griffin. I hope he doesn't mind. We've been great friends, and I'm stick real closely with his blog, and the library things we've done have been fun here in town with the jazz. And we've got some jazz friends and haiku poetry folks that we hang with a little bit. And he's just an inspiration to everybody I know he's rubbed up against, honestly.
True story. I agree with you 100% there. Maybe we should Redheaded Stepchild jazz night and poetry. And maybe then Bill will play harmonica. Check the comments for things that struck. Yeah, see? So many people are writing notes to you, Bill. You need to check the chat section.
All right. Okay.
Suzanne, I'm coming to you. Let's see. I think I got you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, this
gotcha.
poem, this is an older poem, and I can't exactly remember what brought me to write it, but it's about a food that you might have just recently eaten at a certain holiday at the beginning of the year. It's entitled Pot Liquor. All that hot, wet summer growing pent up in peas, kept packed in the deep freeze till the season of pork filled the pot, came softly into the bubbling water like a lady to her bath. Broth so fine they drank it, savoring every drop of sunshine and hard shell work Georgia fields put in people's hands in June. Mama wants pan drippings for her gravies and soups, a juicy bone to sop old bread for the dogs. But Daddy craves the golden, warm, fat-laced liquor from peas, greens, snap or runner beans, and any salt cure he gets Mama to drain in a little cup, him to swallow down smooth farm memories of his own mother's meals. I drink like the sweet honey from a rock.
Oh, gorgeous. Thank you, Suzanne. I'm really glad you're here. And Suzanne, I think you and Bill are in a writers group together.
Yes, we just met in October. Yeah, so I'm honored to be here. Thank you,
That's
Bill,
awesome.
for inviting me. Yeah, that was published in
Yeah, we hope you'll consider
2009.
coming again, and make sure you check the chat sections. Oh, is this from a book?
Oh,
Could
yeah.
you put a link in? If you wouldn't mind, Suzanne, we try to make sure that we give everybody a chance to connect to the book. So if you
Yeah.
could put a link in there, that'd be great.
Sure. This was actually just a journal. It was just a poem in a review. So I don't know that that's what, but I will do it anyway. So
That's perfect.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Shamala, our gorgeous Shamala, who is
Kamala.
coming to you. I got you now.
So
Give it a
think
second.
I
There we go.
I'm loving how tender all the poems today are. Maybe it's the beginning of the year and we're all feeling gentle. It's nice. This is about my hometown, sort of, and here and there. I grew up in Kuala Lumpur, which is a baby LA now, but back then it was a medium-sized town, close to the equator. And in the center of town, between my high school and my house, there was a lake, a garden, botanical garden sort of place, with a bowl-shaped structure and an artificial lake in the middle. So I would have spent my life sitting in the lake gardens in Kuala Lumpur, where I was born, under a tree on those slopes sliding down to the lake, the marsh green of it shallow, artificial, and yet town girl that I was, filled with nature as I understood it. The air mostly quiet, above, for a town, the bubble park traffic distant or rare, occasional children's voices, a man selling balloon animals, again nature tamed, squeaky orange lion without teeth, as I was without skin in that place. My heritage, blended east and west, illusion of balance, peace, palm trees and fir trees, Christmas trees, we call them, those, native and other, together. Except for politics, outside the park, up the hill, Parliament Hill, a curved overpass road leading there, lined with fancy lamps for importance. The Constitution practiced there, institutionalized rights, roles by race, some and other. And so I said goodbye and left, not knowing some and other was a universal rule everywhere. Thank you.
Holy smokes. That is very powerful. Thank you. I did want to ask, is the painting behind you one of yours?
Yes, ma'am.
Ah, could you put your
Um,
website where people could go see
yep.
your artwork?
I will do.
Because she has some gorgeous sweetheart, in addition to being a fabulous poet, is also a visual artist and now has a shop. So I want to make sure, because I love the colors behind there. Yeah, beautiful intonation is Regina. Yeah, so tender, even when the content is challenging, Regina. Thanks for saying that, because I think
Thank
that
you.
that's a very important. There's such a beauty to the poem, but there's also such this, hard truth, this reality. And as the speaker comes aware of it, we hit it in that last couple of lines. Very powerful. Cal, I'm coming to you, and I will spotlight you. Make sure you unmute. Cal, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Are other people having a hard time?
Yes, can't hear it all.
Yeah, Cal, I don't think your mic is
The-
working or something.
Yeah, his video's not working either. Very, very choppy.
I forgot to speak close to the microphone. I don't think it's going to work today, though. No,
That'll work.
it works.
It works.
Yep. You have to
Oh.
have that.
All right. That's great. Now all I have to do is remember where I put the poem. This one is called Chaos, and it's my #1 chaos poem. I have several. And it's just plain called Chaos. You may have heard some other ones, but oak branches cast shadows on grass while dew rises as mist. A Topeka twister leaps from a void like a new universe out of a point now invisible, being everywhere at once. A phase transition, like water boiling on the stove, ice melting in Greenland, paper up in smoke on Wall Street, or a chemical stew in sun, bolt struck, deciding to reproduce. The logic beyond perception in clouds on top of clouds. Our shadow world in the smoky firelight of this cave. The same logic that prevents prediction of weather, regulates an epidemic, the loss of lift by a wing or a population heading for extinction, is that which drives evolution. How leaves seek light, capillaries deliver blood, the pulsing heart refreshing every vein, not missing one cell. Choices not random, but infinite, yet bounded in a universe that is only so big. Choices we make. Clouds on top of clouds, words, monkeys blogging on keyboards long enough to write sonnets. If you look too close, you see a stream of O's and ones. Too far back, and it's a blue and white circle filled with invisible lines of infinite length. Imaginary logic of chaos is the invisible force that drives life. Life, an eruption of chaos from a stew and a storm, storms on in a universe too complex to observe as a whole. So we make rules for peace. If you look one way, a wide, empty canvas is still to be created. But look back, and the path is filled with imaginary choices, extra dimensions, alternate universes we might as well accept as having had their day and let them disperse like steam. And that's the only one I brought to read today.
Thank you so much, Cal. I just was looking at the chat section. Make sure you check that. There were several lines that people,
Good.
honed in on. Yep. So I don't want you to miss that.
Look.
Awesome. I have two, but I wanted to check in. Bill, I saw you had your hand raised, Bill Blackley. Oh, you put it down already. Never mind. Did I miss something?
No, I just couldn't hear it here a while ago. Can
Okay,
you hear- can
perfect.
you
Just
hear me
checking
now?
in. Yep, you're perfect.
Okay,
I have
just-
Donna. Go ahead.
Okay. This poem was published by Jack R. Press. And it was a group of poems that were shared during the pandemic. And it was called Spread the Word, the book I thought was very clever. The title of the poem is St. Philip Neri Oratory Church Fresco, Rock Hill, South Carolina. We pray still, broken as winter rocks, our holy fool now silent as a cloud, the Eucharist a mural, Capriccio once the companion, now an anonymous dog in painted plaster, Cardinal Newman's three-corner hat, long ago turned gray as dust, at the stiff, bruised leather feet of Jesus. A sister, face red as a heart, quotes Hopkins by memory. Voices like gravel answer, loud as dawn, straining to sing what went to ruin in full-throated belief.
Smoking. That's awesome. Yeah, loud as dawn. A couple of those were said, gray as dust stuck with me as well. Yeah. Check the chat section. As I say, Donna, I've got Regina and then CS are our last two readers, and I'm coming to you, Regina.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
I have so enjoyed this, Bill. This was quite wonderful, but I know you're wonderful, so and I think a lot of us do, but it was wonderful. Um, I'm glad to see Paul too. He's been following me around. That's my tease. So one of the places that we're both going to be is in Carteret County for the Bogue Banks Friends of the Bogues Bank Library on February 15th. And so the poem that I'm going to share with you today is actually not one that I'm going to read at Bogue Banks, but it is actually one that came out of about 5 poems that I wrote as I was preparing to send off to that. This poem, my father's family is from that area, Carteret and Craven County. I don't know if any of you have seen the documentary Silver Dollar Road, but I encourage you to watch that, Silver Dollar Road. That is about my family, some of my family, a part of my family's experience in being living in that area for a long time and being dispossessed of their land. This poem that I'm going to read today is entitled Afro Carolina, Land, Sea, and Stew. We are land, sprawling soul and skin, steeped in Carolina sand and soil. It has built us in the best of times, covered us in the worst. Our hearts beat telltale notes of knowing that we are of this place, these banks, outer, inner, and beyond. We are water, fluid and flowing, shimmering, sometimes rising as waves of knowing, showing the world that our depth is more than deep. It is complex, water wailing, water washing, water witnessing, singing through sounds, the sea, a birth canal that has spit us upon the shores, reminded us to breathe, to cry, but not to die. We are these, fed holy fish, tomato broth, bacon, potatoes, asked by earth and ocean to trust, to believe, to be made whole, misted and sanctified by the voices of our people, this sand and the tides that rock in and out.
Gorgeous. And Joan just put that it is on Amazon Prime.
Yes.
So if you wanted to, that's good to know. Thank you. I was trying to, yep. Silver Dollar Road is on Amazon Prime. Thank you, Regina. Our final poet tonight is CS. And I might need you to speak out. So there,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sometimes it
But-
takes me a minute to find somebody. Sorry, guys.
My name's Christina Elliott. I'll get that fixed for the next time if I'm privileged to be a part of this. This has just been, I've just been in awe. I'm a real novice at this, and I got invited by Bill, so thank you, Bill, for I came across his website, griffinpoetry.com today, and just reached out to him. My poem is not published, and it touches on the love theme that Bill brought up earlier. A woman sits in a chair. The room deepens with the shadow of dusk,
just wanna say
overtaking. What was that?
I think somebody was accidentally unmuted.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that, Christina.
Okay. If I may start over, I'm sorry. A woman sits in a chair. The room deepens with the shadow of dusk, overtaking, till there is the blanket of darkness. She is lost in thought, in memories, yet time moves along. She silently says, I love you, the room empty of those her heart holds. Miles and boundaries, time and space. She thinks of the ones she misses, her laughter, her voice, her conversation, her brilliance. But she respects the silence, the need to let go, to not intrude with a mother's heart. She sits in the chair, time but once a trickle, slow in childhood, now grown in the rushing rapids of growing old, the torrents of pain of growing apart and missed experiences. She silently says, I love you, the room empty of those her heart holds. She does her best to respect the boundaries needed for another, but her heart cries, missing the joy of her daughter. I love you.
Oh, that is gorgeous. Thank you so much for and Christina, I hope you will check the chat section because there was a lot of us writing comments about it. Very beautiful.
Thank
And
you. And
like
I
the
just,
repetition.
Thank you.
it's just been beautiful I've just been in awe of listening to everyone before me. So thank you for sharing your hearts and your words. So again, thank you.
We meet every Thursday.
Thank you for being here and for sharing yours.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
It's awesome. Thank you all for being here. Bill, thank you for being, yourself and bringing those beautiful poems to life here. And Bill Black, it was so fabulous to see. It was fabulous to see all y'all. I think this is a good sign for 2024. And like Bill was going to remind y'all, we opened for submissions in February. And I did also want to say Regina's book, The Fire Talker's Daughter, there's a link in the chat section as well. Guys, when I forget, I'm so glad that y'all remember because I think it's so important for supporting each other, for being here in community and for getting to hear such powerful poems from the heart. Appreciate it. Deep admiration. And don't forget, thanks guys. Don't forget to also check out art. All right,
one other
guys.
comment
Yes.
before you all leave, and that is that Saturday, January 20th is the North Carolina Poetry Society meeting in the morning on Zoom. So we have 2 virtual meetings and 2 in-person meetings a year. And you can go to ncpoetrysociety.org and get the details about linking into that for readings, open mic, workshop. It's going to be a great day.
Yeah,
Yay,
and
Bill,
just
thank
a
you.
reminder, thank you so much, Bill. Also a reminder, this is free, open to the public. Anybody here can show up there. So that's a beautiful thing.
Malika,
All right,
did you
guys.
want to did you want to share a link to Redheaded Stepchild, Malika?
Oh, you know, I should, and heaven's sake, I don't have it prepared. You'll find it on Facebook. That's the easiest way. Join, join the section there, but no, thank you, Karen.
Are you
Man,
gonna
I
put
need
it, are
somebody
you gonna
helping
put it
me
on your
out.
page?
I'll put it on my regular page where
Okay.
you can, submission, and it's redheaded stepchild mag@gmail.com is our email. But if you go to Facebook, you can see all the stuff there. And nicely enough, Joan has put a link to North Carolina Poetry Society, all the events. So fabulous, guys. I will see y'all not next week. Next week I will be elsewhere telling ghost stories. But the week after I'll see y'all. Be well. Thank you.